This is Unrendered on IKTV. I'm Tony Regisford, and on this edition, my guest is Mrs. Anesia Baptiste. She's a former senator of the New Democratic Party, and now she heads the Democratic Republican Party, which is a party that she formed, and we're here to discuss that and more things. Anesia, welcome to Studios of IKTV. Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Regisford. And
very good.
Good evening to Vincentians and all who are listening to us.
And let me just say, you can call me Tony, so that may make it easier and shorter to say.
All right.
Let us start by looking at the current political climate here in St. Vincent and by extension the Caribbean. You are a player in this field. You've been a senator. You've been involved in politics, in mass parties. You've been in the ULP. You've been in the NDP. Now you are forging ahead with your own organization, political organization. So you're a political animal, as it were. Give me your views on the current status of politics in St. Vincent.
Well, I think that there are a lot of things that can be improved. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the actual general system, my party reflects part of it. The democratic aspect of the name of my party has to do with the fact that we agree with the scientific method of electing persons into government and electing governments. That is where persons who are eligible to vote. The party with the majority seat wins and governs. We are in support of that scientific method of electing governments, hence the democracy or democratic in the party's name. We believe, however, that it is not altogether perfect system when it comes to governing, because what usually happens is that some people believe that because you are elected by democracy, that is majority rules, when you're now governing, you must more pay attention to the majority who elected you. This is where republicanism comes in. I believe that we need to look more at that philosophy of governance called republicanism, which emphasizes that when you're governing, you must govern with respect for the rights and freedoms of all of the people, not just the majority who elected you.
Let me just say this. The two mass parties now, the New Democratic Party and the ULP, both have held reins of government here. Yes. One for 17 years, one now going on 12, whatever. They would have come to power in each successive election that they won on that promise, that they're here for everybody. So it's not a new concept, certainly not lost on them. But what breaks down there? Because they promised that. They promised to look after everybody, not just the people who support them. Why do you think that breaks down?
So essentially, it's paying lip service, really, to the idea. But I really believe that there's not enough education and belief, embracing of the idea that government is the protectorate of all of the people, and that your purpose is to serve all of the people, not just those who elected you. In as much as they say, yes, we're here for all, together now, etc. In reality, in governance, in practice, this is a constant cry, political victimization, and the cry was there too when the NDP was there. And the cry that because I don't support you, because I'm critical of you, I can't get this or I can't get that done. So while in mouth and in word and in tongue, they say they're there for all, in practice it is really believed that you have to sort of make sure you take care of your own and maybe alone in order to get back in governance. So the emphasis is on what am I going to do to ensure I'm returned for the next term, as opposed to really ensuring that the governance and the representation touches all.
So you're saying that the word republicanism in your
that is what it
party
embodies.
Is about governing everybody.
Yes.
How are you going to ensure that that's what you in fact do?
Well, first of all, by my own example, and by ensuring that where there are mistakes or problems in my team, because it could be that somebody on my team does something that it is not in harmony with that principle, I would ensure that they are disciplined. And when I say disciplined, I'm not talking about some transfer from one office to the other that really doesn't show respect to the people, but that the noble office that they profess and that they hold is really treated like that. Because when you just move a person around who has done great evil or some corruption, it shows great disrespect to the persons whom they're supposed to be serving. and it really doesn't help the situation because they go to another area and they might behave it the same way. They become complacent. They figure, well, my party's in office, they're my friends, nothing's going to happen to me.
Yeah.
I will ensure that proper discipline takes place and that there is transparency. So there must be accountability. The people must know what happened with this case that the report of the auditors said this corruption take place. I must come back to the people and let them know what was the result.
I am hearing you, and it's a set of ideals, obviously, I'm sure that everybody who's listening to you would support. However, let's try to carve out a slice of reality here, what possibly obtains. The party is voted into office. It's after fiercely fought election, very competitive. You know, emotions get high during the campaign, and you know, people even get tribal to that degree. Okay, and that's almost ingrained in our culture, certainly the culture of politics. And we're talking about the Caribbean, we're talking about St. Vincent as well. Now, you go into the fray in the same manner. You win an election. Your supporters are now behooving you to look after them. We're the ones who put you there. How are you going to resist that pressure? How are you going to, because on the one hand, you're thinking of winning the next election, eh? On the other hand, you want to live true to your principles.
Right. So first of all, I'm not saying we shouldn't take care of our own.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you take care of your own. They supported you, that's good. But sometimes your own doesn't have need of certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Why take material that somebody, let's say, who's a ULP supporter and who criticized me during the campaign, really needs, I mean, he or she qualifies. Why take it and give it to a DRP supporter who doesn't need it? And it sits there at the side of his house or her house and maybe rots or they sell it. Why do that? It's wastage. And it can go to somebody who needs. I will teach my supporters to understand these things. And that doesn't mean I won't be taking care of them. It simply means that I won't be taking things that they don't need, for example, and giving it to them just because they support me.
Are you saying...
That's an example.
Okay, but are you saying the first thing you're going to do is to take care of their needs first?
No, I'm not giving a necessary, I'm not particularly dealing with an order of who I'll take care of first. I'm dealing with the issue that everybody should be taken care of, that there must be respect for the rights and freedoms of all. So it means, for example, if the person who can do the job better because they're more qualified, etc., just happens to be a former NDP supporter, it doesn't mean that he or she mustn't get the job just because he's not a DRP supporter. If there's no DRP supporter who can do the job as good as he or she can do it. I just can't stand, personally, this. I'm a young person, Tony. I'm 33 years old, just turned 33. I'm a university scholar, I'm an island scholar from 1998. I've traveled, I've studied, I've seen the kind of maturity with which certain agencies and organizations operate. And it really hurts me to my heart to see the way some of our people are made to suffer because of political victimization culture. I know we can't get rid of the tribalism altogether. I know it will always exist. I don't think we'll ever be able to get rid of it. But we must lead differently by example if we want to see difference.
So I asked you about your views on the current political climate, current political situation. Do you think, and as much as you're talking about victimization, do you think that the current ruling party practices wanton victimization?
I have seen examples with the current government of political victimization, yes.
Do you think it's going to change without a DRP coming into the scene?
I don't think so.
Why? Why don't you think that the NDP is going to offer a better, a better system of government, as it were?
Well,
because they're certainly promising that.
I understand. If you look at the New Democratic Party, what you see, and I'm talking here about policies generally and behavior of the party led by its leaders, you see, for example, that there is a very bad example of how they will govern by virtue of the very way they deal with their very own. The very way they treat their very own persons who become critical of them or who disagree with them at a certain point. That for me is an indication of what they will do also if they were to take the
Are you saying this because you were on the short end of the stick?
I was not the only one.
But you were one.
Also, yes, and that is evidence. It was a very public issue, and it is evidence of how poorly they manage their own internal affairs. And as a result of this, it's very difficult to trust again such a party with managing the affairs of the country. If you can't deal with a simple matter where you have somebody for you or somebody internally disagreeing with you, if you manage it so poorly and you show that you're going to make decisions based on hearsay and so on, that is a very poor indication of what you will do when you're in governance. You can't run a country on commerce, as we would say in local parlance.
Anesia, I didn't want to get too sidetracked with your particular issue, but in as much as it
it is instructive.
Yeah, but in as much as it came up, you are assuming that you're in the right. And,
I know that I'm in the right. The facts show that I'm in the right.
And the leadership of the NDP are in the wrong. But and I'm not challenging it, I'm just throwing it out there that you seem to have given the leadership of the NDP no choice but to deal with the matter in the way they dealt with it, given the long letter that you wrote to the leader, which was rife with, I don't want to say insults, but very strong language, very condescending language. He may have felt that he had to react in the way he did.
Strong language, yes. Condescending, no. If you look at the facts, it would prove that it was a reaction to what was taking place, and what was taking place was very unfair and unjust. The leader of the opposition was prepared to go with hearsay and judge a matter and make a policy that would have negative impacts upon myself and others going forward as candidates based on things he had heard, not even based on evidence that he had judged for himself, because as I showed in the letter, he did not listen to the tape in question. I am saying that is a very poor reflection of somebody who calls themselves a leader. You can't lead like that. You have to be able to judge properly and judge righteously, as it were. Because if you think about it on a level of policy for the country, if you're going to let what a vice president or somebody come and whisper into your ears without your own personal assessment of the matter and judgment of it before you take a policy position to go forward, it means the country could be in serious trouble. This is the bigger picture I want people to see.
Okay.
And so this is what I'm saying when I say that, yes, the language was strong and it was necessary because of the matter that was being dealt with. And I wouldn't deal with a matter like that. He didn't have to do that. I would see that the person who's writing to me like that is honest, is very frank. I can trust him or her because I know where he stands. He's not saying one thing to my face and something else behind my back.
So you'd see the positive side.
Precisely. And I would recognize that, look, hey, if we have to fire everybody in every organization for standing up to their boss and saying, boss, this thing that we're doing in the business is wrong and it's going to get us in trouble, then the whole country would be in trouble.
Before I take this segment out,
yeah.
You've had the experience of being in the NDP and under the leadership of Anna Eustace. You have been with the ULP, I don't know in what capacity, but I'm sure you've interacted with the leadership of the ULP, maybe not a direct sense. Do you think, in all seriousness, that the leadership of the ULP would not have done the same thing?
I do not know. What I know is that when I was working with the government as the communications manager at the Ministry of Tourism for standing up for my freedom of expression during the Constitution referendum exercise, 16 charges were brought against me for misconduct as a public servant, despite the fact that the old law which said public servants couldn't go on a platform and speak, etc., had been repealed by the very same ULP administration. So if we look at both examples, what you see is grave disrespect for the constitutional freedom of conscience and expression of individuals in the country, just because in those moments the expressions they gave are critical of you, or not what you want to hear. And both parties have displayed the same attitude. This is why I personally don't think any of them are fit for governance going forward in the future of a mature St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
We're going to take this out in the first segment. So when we come back, we'll continue a little bit more analyzing the current situation, looking at the leadership of both parties, because after all, you are going to be contesting against them. So we'll spend a little time looking at that when we come back.
Okay.
This is Unrendered on IKTV. My guest is Mrs. Anesia Baptiste. She is the leader of the Democratic Republican Party. More when we come back.